Welcome to the Inventory Professional Podcast, brought to you by InventoryBase, providers of industry-leading property inspection software, accredited training, and on-demand property reports. Join us as we discuss the latest news, legislation, and all things property, hosted by our very own inventory expert, Sian Metcalf. With regular special guests, listen in to our open and honest discussions about the role of the inventory professional and how to navigate through this ever-changing, fast-paced industry.
Welcome to the Inventory Professional with me, Sian, and my co-host, Melissa. And today we have a special guest, Ewan Dixon from Cherry Tree Inventories. Welcome, Ewan.
Thank you, Sian. Hello to you.
Hi, Melissa. How are you?
Yes, good. Thank you. Welcome, Ewan.
Thank you, Melissa. Hello to you.
Great. Lovely to have you both on today's podcast. One of the things I'm going to do straight away for everybody that's listening is that this situation with COVID-19, with everything that's going on, everything is evolving at such a rapid pace. The likelihood of what we're going to talk about today will probably all have changed, maybe even by this afternoon, because we're expecting the Chancellor to make a very big announcement about how they're going to help self-employed people, which in the most part, as inventory professionals, that's exactly what we are. So just bear in mind that, we're going to be talking now, but maybe in a couple of hours' time, this could all change, and with the time taken to get the editing done on a podcast, etc. So things might then be quite different to how things go beyond and forward from later today. So just bear that in mind. But let's talk about where we are now. And one of the reasons Ewan is joining us is because Ewan and I connected on LinkedIn today, didn't we, Ewan?
We did indeed, yes, we did.
So what was your reasons for connecting with me and sending me a message?
Well, my main concern, obviously, at the moment is where it seems lots of people have ceased operations in full at the moment. My main concern with you, really, Sian, was hoping to get some information on how you feel we should be communicating with either current clients that we have or with potential new clients without seeming sort of ignorant to the government guidelines, if that makes sense to you. I'm sure it does.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean. Are you kind of like saying about how do we advise our current client base, bearing in mind what's happening and whether we're actually operating as inventory clerks, what advice we should be giving them, and they then should also be thinking about us and our safety and welfare, but also potentially, looking for new clients, bearing in mind that some people aren't operating, whereas we are, but in a very diminished capacity. Does that sound about right?
It does, Sian. Pretty much, you've got it nailed on there. It is a sense of just sort of adhering to what's been laid out to us, but just sort of carrying on, business as usual, without sort of seeming like we are just treading out, stepping out and making contact with tenants and letting agents, sort of just making sure that we aren't, as I say, just being ignorant of the guidelines, but without also potentially losing any future clients by not being able to engage with them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. Funny enough, Melissa, you and I were talking about it just literally about an hour or so ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think because everything is so fast moving, it's really hard to know how it all sort of fits together. There's guidelines that have changed in the last couple of days, but there's people's interpretation of that as well. And I'm hearing very different things from different agents. I know a few clerks have completely ceased because they think that that's what they should be doing. So it's piecing it all together really as, some definitive guideline as to what we should really be doing. And sort of like saying, you don't necessarily want to turn down work from an agent because that's our interpretation of the guidelines and then find someone else. But you don't want to be in breach of the guidelines, as it were, itself. That's
correct. Yes, that's right. That's exactly my point. Yeah.
It's a real difficult situation, without a doubt. I mean, on the one hand, you've got government guidelines, and at the end of the day, it's about saving lives, as the government's quite rightly saying. This is about taking the pressure off the NHS, making sure people aren't connecting, are self-isolating so that the spread of this virus is minimised as much as possible, because we know. I mean, before the call was started, I was looking at today's headline news and just looking at the figures coming out of Italy and out of Spain, etc. It doesn't paint a worrying picture. It is a worrying picture, and obviously anything we can do to minimise that is exactly what we should be doing, just as human beings, just as individuals. But then again, we've also then got the pressure, as you say, Ewan, about your current client base, keeping it, not seeing it going off to someone else who is operating. Obviously, at the moment, we don't really have any idea of whether we're going to get any government advice and support in regards to both financial, but also being a bit more clear on what we can and can't do. Because, like you said, Melissa, interpretation, it seems so wide and so grey. It's so difficult, and a lot of people, as you say, are stopping. Other people, including myself to a certain degree, are carrying on. But I mean, certainly within my situation, we've got diminished capacity because we've got clerks self-isolating quite rightly. So we're just doing the absolute bare minimum that is required, that is really needed to effectively stop people from becoming homeless, the ones that are trapped in between. But even then, there's a lot of kind of conversation that I'm seeing online saying you shouldn't even be doing that. But then you've got the government saying that, certain moves can go ahead, certain types of work can still happen, like maintenance and other urgent issues, etc., addressed by the landlord or by the agent. And one of those is interpreted as being moving. If you're between houses and you can't go back, you need to go forward, and we can help facilitate that. But it's a very, very difficult situation, and most people are taking the guidelines and just trying to interpret them as the best they can that fits them personally, but adhering to all of the health and safety aspects of it. It's just so difficult. I don't even know if there's a right or wrong answer, apart from literally just stopping and isolating, and that's it. But then financially, how do we all cope?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and how do we go forward financially with it? Like I said, you don't want to shoot yourselves in the foot by rejecting work, and seemingly that would start to filter off now anyway. If most agents are operating on the basis that they only conclude lets that have already been agreed, and no new properties are going to be viewed, then you would think that it would taper off. But I mean, I've seen quite a few agents now start sort of posting online about doing virtual viewings. In which case they are operating by the guidelines, I suppose, because their offices are closed, they're doing it from home, they're doing virtual, but actually that then still necessitates our role. And, it's that fine line between whether we're doing necessarily something wrong that we shouldn't be doing, or whether that's still allowed to go ahead. Just where I live, I've seen a lot of police stopping people and querying them to say sort of, where are you going? What are you doing? I personally haven't. Sorry.
I suppose you're asking is it essential?
Yes, that's it. Yeah, is it essential? I mean, I personally haven't been stopped, but I know a friend that works in an agency. They do inventories in-house, and she mentioned that their clerk was stopped outside a property and quizzed as to why you here is not essential. And then the police seemingly took photographs as well of sort of the situation, the clerk at the property in their car. And I kind of thought, well, if their interpretation is that we shouldn't be doing it, should we be doing it? But from the guidelines, it doesn't seem like they're saying we shouldn't.
No, because the guidelines do say if you can't work from home, and our work by the very nature of it cannot be done at home, we have to go to the property.
Yes. Yeah, that's it, exactly. And it's, leading back to that financial situation, if we are allowed to do it and we're comfortable to do it, then maybe we should be carrying on with it anyway, especially if the agents are providing the work. I mean, I've been contacted by a private landlord today as well to say their agency that they would use through sort of like a tenant find isn't operating at the moment, and would I do it? And it's whether we're taking on that new work as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what you were alluding to earlier, Ewan, is exactly what do we do about that? I mean, from your point of view, how are you managing that at the moment?
Well, I think Melissa's just made a good point there. I myself have had calls from letting agents, and they basically said, "Are we still operational to do checkouts?" They were quite specific on the checkouts. No like inventory reports on makes as such. And this was one of them was yesterday, and obviously I did say at this moment in time we are still operating. We will go obviously keep an eye closely on the government guidelines. So we will still operate and take into consideration all the health and safety, precautions, like you've mentioned in your previous podcasts, the gloves, the masks, shoe covers, collecting of keys in specific pickup points, so taking all that into consideration, limiting social contacts on transport. Obviously, we're based in London and West Essex, so a lot of ours will be using the underground, which again just again raises the moral question. There is the financial aspect. Obviously, I don't want to be turning down new clients asking me to do checkouts. It does seem like obviously the people that done the make or the interim reports have probably ceased all operations at this moment in time while they're seeking out a new inventory clerk. But just again, it's just the moral aspect of this. You don't want to be sort of advertising like you're just carrying on regardless. But it's just such a difficult situation to be in, Sian, as we said.
It is. Yeah, no, it is. I mean, I suppose if you break it down into very, very simplistic terms, the government has said, unless it's essential, unless you cannot do that work from home, then you shouldn't be going out. That is exactly what they're saying. And obviously, like you say, going out on public transport, especially the tubes, watching what was happening yesterday on the news, that is not good for anybody. And again, you only have to go to what Italy is going through right at the moment. And even they said on the news today, they can't believe that we are still having people do that. But quite rightly, they also then went to some people say, well, I haven't got the funds to not work. If I don't work, I'm not going to get any help. What am I meant to do? So a lot of these people are stuck in this quandary. What do you do? But again, if you take it to its literal terms, no, we shouldn't be out.
Yes.
We're not essential. However, interpreting the government guidelines, it says if you have to go out and you cannot do it from home, which effectively that's where we are. So for me at the moment, and I'm literally watching the guidelines, watching the news, being on top of everything as much as I possibly can, I'm saying what I'm doing is like you both are doing: overshoes, gloves, sanitizer, no tenant contact. I've had one client go, I want you to do a checkout, tenant wants to meet you, and it's like, no, it's not happening. And it's like, well, I can't get the keys to you, not my problem, that is not happening. It's not safe for them, it's not safe for me, simple as. So no contact. I'm doing reports as early as possible in the morning, so sorting the keys the day before to make sure I've got everything, getting in, getting done, and basically getting out again and being very careful. I think one concern that I really have for all inventory providers is the issue of checkouts, because one, we don't know whether there was any problems in regards to health with those tenants checking out, and bearing in mind what government understands at the moment. And again, because it's such a new issue, there is conflicting advice and evidence about how long the virus potentially might stay on surfaces. Realistically, should we be doing checkouts the day after? Should we be not looking at least 72 hours, which from what I can understand at the moment is the longest period from where the virus might still be active on a metal surface, for argument's sake? I don't know if you guys have heard that.
Yeah, so I had heard sort of the incubation period of it, and it is a worrying point, not only because I think agents are as well, just due to the nature of the work, always schedule a move-in quite close to a checkout.
Yeah.
So there's pressure from them to go in sooner, but also you've got to look at, what's the next step there, that they're letting tenants move in. sooner? And is the property going to be thoroughly cleaned? I mean, obviously for us, it won't be at the stage we go in, but for the new people moving in as well, with what's happening at the moment, are cleaners even really on hand to be doing such thing? And it almost needs, like we said, sort of a direct, this is what you need to do. But if we are all allowed to still keep operating, I think we need further guidelines to that perhaps, because obviously people don't show symptoms from what I'm hearing to maybe sort of 5 days to a week afterwards, that everything needs to have sort of a thorough deep clean in between tenancies, and then, you know, that be something that is a necessity and needs to be happened and is monitored.
Yeah, and I think this is the point you raised certainly on our message earlier on, Ewan, is the fact that we don't have that clear guidance. I'm not really seeing any clear guidance from the government. I'm not seeing it from ALA. I'm not seeing it really from AIIC. I know AIIC put out a LinkedIn post earlier on, and it was just basically regurgitating everything we kind of like know anyway. What I would like to have seen is very kind of like firm. You're our members, this is what we're saying you shouldn't be doing, bearing in mind the government guidelines. But I think everybody, to be fair to both bodies, are a bit worried, because if they say something and then from that something happens, maybe someone gets ill, or God forbid actually passes away because they've caught the virus because they were taking the advice, it puts everybody in a real difficult position. So I think we're kind of like left to get on with it. That's my feeling at the moment.
Yes, Sian, it does. As you say, I've been keeping an eye on different sorts of information fed, whether it's via letting agents as well as say the AIIC. There just doesn't seem to be that sort of specific. Yes, you can do this, or no, you can't do that. It's almost like we are sort of not at the mercy as such of the letting agents or landlords, but obviously just going on instruction as and when. But we do have a duty of care to tenants and to ourselves and to the public. So it's quite an interesting topic, really, but no definitive answer.
Yeah, it would have been nice to maybe have this conversation about something maybe less dangerous, but equally as interesting. But we are where we are. I think for me, it's about following the government guidelines, making sure you put all the protocols in place to keep everybody safe. And you also, like with me, I've got clerks that work with me, and it's down to them how they feel, making sure that they've got all the right equipment. And if they don't feel comfortable, if they don't feel safe, then that's fine. I don't think anybody should be pressured into doing anything that they don't want to do. Equally, I think it's about keeping on top of what the government guidelines say. I've got a feeling, looking what's happening in Europe at the moment, Spain and Italy being the main kind of epicenters, as it were, and the numbers that are coming out practically every single day of those that have sadly lost their lives over this virus, that I can honestly see a full lockdown. So literally, unless you are absolutely essential, everything else stops. And in a way, I think me and Melissa were talking about this earlier on, weren't we, about, in a way we'd rather someone actually say that, because that takes a bit of the pressure off us, and also it might then help with the government to decide on the financial package as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I would welcome that happening, essentially, so we all know where we stand and we're not letting down clients and from their expectations of what we should be doing. So I think it would certainly help on that front. And I do think, certainly where I'm based in Southampton, it's kind of business as usual for people. I'm seeing a lot of people on the streets. I drove down a high street yesterday, and there was traffic jams. There are so many people out. I drove past an M&S food hall, and it was like it was barbecue weather. It was crammed. There were people queuing for parking spaces. And I think, whilst certainly the majority of people seem to be taking it seriously, other people think of this as a bit of a holiday. The weather's nice. Now that they've kind of been guaranteed that some money's coming through, which, ourselves, we don't have that luxury. No, people are just gathering. I was in a property earlier in the week, and it was later on in the afternoon, and I could hear neighbours in their gardens all sort of congregating and having a lovely time, and people aren't sticking to the guidelines, and so half of the country is kind of on this partial working from home lockdown, doing everything that they can, and then there are people that are going out and having lovely days out. I mean, we all saw what happened at the weekend. I think was it Snowdonia somewhere had the most visitors it's had ever, which is just the most ridiculous thing when you think what's happening, that these are people's lives at stake, and there's that sort of blasé, people think, oh, it won't happen to me. And also, I think because a lot of the advice early on was it would happen to older people and people with underlying health conditions, that kind of everyone else thinks that they're immune to it, or it will be a bit like a cold. Whereas, we really don't know what it would be like at all, but people are willing to take that risk.
Yeah, and like you say, the whole issue about the age demographic of this was completely blown out the water yesterday by the a few deaths where they were 18 and 21 and 34 and 47. So that whole idea that if you're 70 plus, you're the only ones that are going to potentially succumb, and all the younger generation thinking, well, it doesn't affect me. You only had to watch the news again yesterday to see that is just not the case.
Yeah, I think you're right. It did highlight the issues. It's I think there was one with a 5-year-old boy. He didn't pass away from it, but he was quite poorly. And as you say, the 21-year-old, no underlying health issues. I think that hasn't helped, because people's first information they received was it will only affect the elderly, and I think that has delayed seeping through to everyone, that to say that information is actually incorrect.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, just before we started talking, watching the news, looking at the pictures, from Italy, and to be honest with you, let's be very blunt, the coffins all lined up. The fact that they're repurposing the Excel Centre, probably the NEC and other big areas, they're not doing that because it makes great headline news, etc., or because they've got nothing better to talk about. These things are going into place because clearly the government have got the modelling statistics to understand what's potentially coming forward for us based on what they've seen already in Europe. So, I think that if that doesn't bring it home to you, I really don't know what will, in all honesty. But again, I know it's such a struggle, because on the other hand, you think, I've got bills to pay, got shopping to buy, I've got to be able to support myself. And as we know, as inventory professionals, we are very much kind of held by what we can earn, by the fact that we'll get our invoices paid. I mean, that was another worry for me, especially with the bigger companies, the high street ones where they are all shutting up shop. Would anybody actually even pay our invoices for next month? Can we see through the next month? So I'm really hoping that this afternoon, when the Chancellor makes his announcement on the press release for, what kind of financial aid he's going to be offering to the self-employed, which we are, even though we're directors and business owners, we're effectively employed by a company, but we're kind of like self-employed because we don't seem to fit into the employed status either, that we'll get some kind of financial help. But until we see what that it looks like, the bullet points and how it's all going to be done, we just don't know. So therefore we're still back in the same boat, aren't we, Ewan? We've got to work until we either can't or told we can't.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, it's pretty much just as you say, it's such a difficult situation. We have to work, but you have to just weigh it up morally, professionally. It's just no answers at the moment. But bills do need to be paid. We don't get much support, as you say, as sole traders or business owners. It's sort of like we're just left hanging in a grey area as such.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to hear, as you say, if there's any further information on complete ceasing of operations for certain businesses. No holds barred. The Prime Minister does his conference later on. Hopefully there's a bit more clarity for us.
Yeah, I think that's all we can hope for. And I think once we understand that, I mean, we'll get the detail, but then I don't know about you guys, but I always wait for the news people to kind of crunch all the numbers and put it into exactly what that kind of looks like, and then we'll have a better understanding. But I think in the meantime, I think, as you've both said, it's about being sensible, following the protocols, doing what you need to do, not necessarily what you can cram in and take on. I mean, I've heard of one company that are on our Facebook support group where they've literally said, look, our clerks are important. We can't risk it. We're shutting. They've done that. All that work then has gone somewhere else. Of course, that's made them worry, which is absolutely understandable. But then is that other company taking on all that extra work, which means if they're taking it on over and above what they're already doing, they are going to be out more than maybe they should. They're going to be exposed more than they would need and should need to be. Is that a sensible thing to do? For me, I think it's about, taking it on an individual basis, what you're comfortable with, following the government guidelines, putting every single protocol in place you can think of, especially in regards to the whole touching thing. Because I don't know about you today, even just going out, getting the keys in the envelope, sanitising it. But by the time you've gone in the property, touch the surfaces, but then you've got to open back up your car, get your wipes out, get the sanitizer out, and the amount of times you've touched different surfaces and then trying to backtrack and clean them all, it's not until you do that you realise just how much transference is possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really makes you think. I was wearing my gloves the other day and I kept them on and I opened the car door and I thought, oh, I've touched the handle. And then I had to take the gloves off and then I thought, oh, I'm touching the handles of my bag and I've already touched those with the gloves. And, because, again, we don't have that much information about how this really works and how sort of potent it is on surfaces. It just makes you think everything you touch. I did read something earlier on as well to say, I mean, I know we were doing the overshoes, but there was an article saying leave your shoes outside a property now because it can be found on the soles and stay there for a certain amount of time. And you sort of think, I'm taking mine off when I get home and they're by the door, but should I be doing more than that? And it's it's sort of a vicious cycle of all the things that you can be doing and all the ways it could go wrong. Really, it's so easy to get hair in your face, touch your face with your gloves on, and you haven't thought about that.
And also, like you said, you've said about touching the car door, but by that point you probably would have put your hand in your pocket, got your keys out.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I've been cleaning my keys as well. It's never ending when you think about it, and there's that certain level of paranoia at this stage.
Well, I think it's justified paranoia, because they said this is not. I mean, if you were to say we would be in this position 4 weeks ago, people would have looked at you and gone, "You're mad. What are you on about?" And I think that's another problem. I think that people working from home, especially now, is the fact that it's so overwhelming, the enormity of what it all is, not just about the impact on you as on a personal, on a business level, etc., and all the problems that comes with it, but it's just the whole sort of, we're here as a world, as a nation, as people. How the hell did we get here? It in a way, the mental side, the fatigue that can set in, it must be enormous, certainly for some people who maybe don't have such good mental health. So one of the things I'm trying to do, certainly from the hub point of view, is be available to talk to people, share as much information as they can do, but get people to think about like routines, getting out in the garden if they've got one, not spending every single minute watching the news, trying to get some kind of routine so that you're interspersing work with what you need to do, and also giving yourself some downtime, and also not thinking that because it is your core work hours, you've got to be doing something. And if anybody's listening to this who knows me, they'll be kind of looking at the screen there going, oh, you're a good one to talk, because I am terrible. If I'm not working, I'm bored. But I also do know and appreciate that there is a need to do that. You need to give yourself a little bit of time off as well. Are you guys doing that?
Well, yeah, I myself have literally been pretty much housebound for days. I am popping out. I'm still sort of caring for my father in a sense. He's an elderly man who literally is completely isolating, hasn't become ill or anything. Mm-hmm. So it's very difficult for me as well, because I can't be going out and sort of catching something and then potentially transmitting it over to my father or getting ill. If I get ill, we're both in a situation, so you have to weigh up the personal as well as the professional. But as you say, you have to have downtime, because not just about carrying on working and communicating and liaising, etc., but it is just mentally draining. Just remembering how to change all your natural reactions and routines. Taking your shoes off when normally you might not do in your own house, and when you've taken your shopping out of a bag, then washing your hands, and then you put it away, and then you think, oh, now I've got to. It's just so difficult to sort of go against all your natural reactions, but you do just have to find some downtime. Sitting indoors all day can be quite a challenge in itself. But then when you get added stress of either caring for someone and trying to run a business, you have to weigh it up, because it could be very detrimental in many different ways.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think you're completely right. And also remember, we have got the lockdown for 3 weeks. It's going to be reviewed in 3 weeks. I don't expect anything's going to change. If I'm honest, I think it would be likely to be even more of a lockdown, i.e. literally no movement unless you absolutely have to. And again, that would then take potentially the pressure and the worry away from us in regards to what decisions we make. But then we need that financial help to stave off those issues, because otherwise you're just replacing one worry with another. So I'm really hoping that we will see something significant, beneficial, and that will be supportive of what we do. And I think going forward, the most we can do at the moment is be sensible, follow guidelines, be aware of others, support each other more than anything else. I mean, I'm always saying to people, I'm on the end of a phone, I'm on the end of a text, I'm on the end of LinkedIn message, got the Facebook group, I'm here. I might not be able to answer, all the questions, but sometimes you don't necessarily need an answer. You just need to maybe vent or just have that conversation, just so you can get it straight in your own head. And I think sometimes that's half the battle, because if you've got no one to talk to, or you're not talking to people in the industry that you work with. And to be fair, as I think inventory providers, we pretty much work in silos. We tend to keep to our patch, and don't share our sweets, as it were. But I think now more than ever, we just need to talk to each other and help and support each other as much as we possibly can, especially with the lack of advice we're getting from our self-appointed bodies and the industry as a whole, and just try and do the best we can. And I think that's all that anybody is doing right at this moment in time.
And I do think it helps as well to talk to people, like you're saying, we might not have the answers, but sometimes you've got sort of these reoccurring circles of thought and you get yourself worked up about it. Whereas even, just today chatting and voicing what your own concerns are and what you're doing, I think that helps put you at ease a little bit as well. So to be able to sort of come together as a community, as it were, and just be able to chat to each other and hear what other people are doing just makes you feel less alone, and understanding that maybe, you're doing the right thing, or there are other things that you can do to help your situation. I think that helps, because we're not all connected in an office way. It's not like we've got a bunch of colleagues that we can have a chat to and see what everyone else is doing. So I think that these sort of things really help, that we can all get our thoughts clear in our own mind, but also, understand what other people are thinking as well.
Yeah, because quite often we're thinking and other people are thinking about it, but then other people would think, well, am I thinking about it? And is that reasonable? Am I being silly? And then if you hear someone else voice it, you think, oh, actually, no, I'm not being silly. No, I think that's quite a valid point. I think the other thing is planning ahead. I mean, Ewan, what are you doing to plan ahead after this is all finished? Because we will come to an end on this. We will get to a peak. It will go the opposite way, and we will get back to work eventually. So have you got anything planned to kind of get yourself ready for that?
In all honesty, Sian, I haven't thought that far ahead just yet, because it's just, it's been so overwhelming. It's almost like we will get through it, but it's going to be a long time. I think at this moment in time, all I will be doing is, be liaising with the clients I've already got. It's almost going to feel like to me that I'll more or less be starting again, sort of sort of blunt as it sounds, it would just sort of be starting again from a fresh, getting in contact with your current clients and ensure that, let them know that you're there. And obviously keep doing that for the foreseeable, and then obviously start to ramp up the marketing or the the seeking of potential new clients, etc. But it does almost feel like it will just be starting afresh when it's all over, because you just don't know when it's going to be. And if you keep thinking, if I kept thinking about that now, the anxieties would creep in. I'd be sitting here thinking, am I missing out on something? Am I overlooking something? Is there something else I should be doing? I just feel at this moment in time, that's just something I'm bearing in mind, but not sort of looking too far ahead of. But it's a good point, Sian. It's good that you've raised that.
I think it's got to be right for you, and you're quite right. It's what you can cope with right now, bearing in mind everything else that you and everyone else is dealing with, and what's comfortable for you. That it's got to be that, because otherwise, like you said, you won't cope. You overwhelm yourself, and it will be too much. But equally, I would say you do need to keep yourself busy. You do need to keep yourself focused to a certain degree. We're all going to have a wobble. Give anybody would, because the situation is just so unprecedented. We're just not ready for it. There's no prepping or anything. It's just happened, and we're just trying to cope the best way we can. But I also know that if you kept busy, if you're doing things, but I'm not just saying work related, I'm also saying, getting some fresh air if you can, talking to people like we're doing now, talking to your colleagues, your counterparts, your peers, and getting that support, just knowing that none of us are on our own in this situation. We're all here, and all we can do is just do our best, and then hopefully once we get to the other side of things, and we can start planning as to what we're going to do next, and then we can hopefully hit the ground running and just have something positive to look forward to more than anything else, I think. Would you agree, Melissa?
Yes, I think I'm probably going to take this opportunity to, like a bit of a spring clean, feel good about what I'm doing, review some of my business processes, do a bit of filing, maybe, prepare some social media posts for future. All those things, they take your mind off what's happening, but also will make me feel a little bit more positive about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that that's going to help. And, worst case scenario, I purchased a ukulele a little while ago. So if we go complete lockdown, yes, I think that I might just start learning ukulele, anything to take my mind of it and feel like I'm doing something. And that's all we can do is, try and weather what's happening now and then see what future brings, really.
You do realise, now that I know that you're going to be trying that, I'm going to want some demonstrations. I'll want a video to see how you do it.
My husband was saying to me, he's like, do you think you'll be any good at it? And I was like, no, but I will give it a go anyway.
Well done you for doing that.
Well, you've got to do something, haven't you? Like you, I'm terrible. I'm bored, so I thought there's only so much cleaning I can do. What else can I do if we do full lockdown? And I was like, well, I'll give learning an instrument a go.
No, I think that's brilliant. Maybe that's what we should both do, you, and get a ukulele. Though I'm probably all fingers and thumbs at the best of times.
Well, I think you're right. It's a good idea to do something. A ukulele hasn't exactly crossed my mind, but
see, there you are. You're part of the band now, so. It's triangles.
Absolutely. Good idea.
I think that is brilliant. Well, I think that's a brilliant point and way to finish today's podcast. Thank you so much for your time, Melissa and Ewan. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. I'm hoping that some of what we just discussed has helped. But it doesn't just stop here. We're going to be doing more podcasts. We're going to be doing webinars. As you know, I talk a lot. I always talk a lot. But equally, if it's useful and it's helpful, and if it helps one person, that's great. And I'm thinking constantly of ways that, I can help other businesses so that, we can get up and running. And like you quite rightly saying, Ewan, make sure that your clients know you're still there, you're still available as and when possible, and that, one thing, when these things kind of sort themselves out and we get to the other end, that you're ready and willing and able to carry on and provide the best service that you've always provided. And I'm sure they'll get a lot of reassurance from knowing that you are there, and that we'll be able to pick things up afterwards and when things start getting back to a bit of normality, because there's going to be a huge amount of work to do. People are still moving, students have still got to check out, people have still got to move in, so there's going to be a huge rush to get a lot of work done in a very short period of time. So in a way, that's something to look forward to, though not so keen on what the checkouts are going to look like.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Sian. It's there certainly will be a fair amount of work. Yeah, as you say, after the self-isolating, God knows what the some of the properties will look like. But and also Melissa made the point, though, of just keeping in touch and communicating like we've done today. You certainly have alleviated a lot of my queries and concerns, and I'm sure other people that hear this will also agree. It definitely has been very useful. I'm very grateful for your time, and also Melissa's. It's been brilliant, really, very helpful.
Oh, that's lovely, Ewan. That's really great to hear. And like I said, that's what we're here for, and anything that can do to help. And to be fair, it helps me as well, because as I'm talking, I'm thinking about things and putting things into place and action for me myself, because I'm still running a business. Yes, I'm doing the InventoryBase Academy and we're podcasting, etc., but I'm still running a business. I've still got clients to worry about, still got clerks to worry about, plus all the normal family pressures, financial pressures as well. So it's not something I'm not aware of. I'm living it the same as everybody else is. So anything I think we can all do to help each other is just going to be a good thing. So looking forward to talking to you both again really, really soon, hopefully on a positive note, with whatever the Chancellor decides to provide for us later on today, but we shall see. But in the meantime, thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you so much, Ewan, and we'll podcast again soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. It was nice talking to you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Inventory Professional Podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, subscribe to our podcast now and share the love. This podcast was brought to you by InventoryBase, providers of industry-leading property inspection software, accredited training, and on-demand property reports.